Right, you might have heard the term changes playing before. I thought, what's that? Is that like jazz, or is it fusion? What is this? We'll get into that. I'm going to show you 5 progressions to practice said changes playing. Let's go. So the term changes playing, I hadn't heard until I started hanging around with Tom, actually. The way I see it, changes playing is basically like the skill set that you would need to play over jazz standards, playing over these different chord progressions, but it is kind of non-style specific. So you're playing over chord changes, but it's not necessarily like vocabulary based. So it's not like bebop and it's not sort of fusion or blues. It's just outlining the chord changes, and the changes can be whatever you want, basically. So with that said, I'm going to show you 5 chord progressions that kind of loosely step up different chord progressions to practice over if you're new to this kind of thing. So if you want to start outlining chord changes and making your playing sound a bit more intentional, it's that kind of thing. So number 1. All right, the first progression, kind of not really a progression, it is just a static chord. So can you outline a chord? Sounds kind of obvious, but if you can't outline a single chord, how are you going to then outline a series of chords next to each other and make it sound like maybe the chords are there when the chords aren't there, if that makes sense? If we just take a static A minor 7, can you make it sound like that A minor 7 is there if nobody is playing underneath you? So the temptation would be, right, A minor 7, I'll just go up and down my pentatonic scale. And yes, while that does work, you want it to sound a bit more intentional. So the way I kind of look at, or the theory that I've been kind of running with for a little bit for the changes playing thing, or outlining chords, is a slight sort of hierarchy. So top of the list is chord tones. So if we've got an A minor 7, my primary initial kind of core target notes would be the minor 7 arpeggio. So even if I just try to play only using those notes, kind of snuck a little pentatonic thing on the end there, but you kind of start to get into the realms of like, oh, I'm aiming for chord tones and it sounds like the chord's there. That would be the main kind of core sound would be the minor 7. Now you could add the 9th to that. So again, only thinking of those 4 notes plus the 9th. So straight away you kind of get into more of like, oh, it sounds like a minor 9 sound, because that's basically what you're doing. You're outlining the notes of a minor 7 chord and adding the 9th, so it's like a minor 9 chord. So at this point, we're kind of edging towards a scale, but without thinking of a scale, which is what we're trying to do. So the first thing will be chord tones. Second thing what I think about is chromatic notes connecting the chord tones. So not scale tones. I try and think about scales last. So the second thing is chromatic notes. So for instance, if I have this note here, which is the minor 3rd, and then I have this note here on the same string, which will be the 5th, I can fill in that gap with chromatic notes, and then it creates interest, but I'm still kind of thinking chord tones primarily. So if I take into account that that's 4 notes, and then I land in, I could go, or. So straight away, this is quite interesting, and I've not really thought about a scale yet. So if I do a bit of playing, adding that in, so we're creating more interest, and again, we haven't kind of thought about any sort of scale yet. We haven't gone, oh, it's that chord, so it's that scale, and it's that chord, so it's that scale. So then the last thing of that kind of 3-tiered hierarchy would be scale tones. The reason I think about this last is more kind of from a thought angle thing, really, because if I think in scales, or if you think in scales, it probably sounds like you're playing scales. If I think A Dorian over that chord, rather than thinking about chord tones and then chromatics and things like that, I would probably sound more like, it'll probably sound a lot more sort of scalic because you're just thinking of a big shape rather than kind of individual targets, if that makes sense. So with that in mind, in terms of a static chord change, you do that on any chord. So we started with a minor 7, you could change that to a major 7. Or dominant 7. Or any other chord. You could do a minor 7 flat 5, or just pick any chord type you want, really. So that's progression number 1. Let's take a look at progression number 2. Right, second progression is just cycling from a 1 chord to a 4 chord back to a 1 chord. So you're slowly introducing the idea of being in one place, aiming for a destination, and then aiming back, basically. And can you make it sound like a chord has changed? This kind of stuff, if you can, would be better to practice perhaps without a backing track or without any sort of backing. So you've got to get that sense of that kind of internal chord change, if that makes sense. So same thing as before, you could do this as a minor 7, major 7, or dominant 7. They're like the three kind of loosely 3 main food groups that are good for this, practicing this kind of stuff. So if we did a minor 7, you'd have an A minor 7, go into a D minor 7, go back to an A minor 7. So you can think of it as like the first sort of 2 chords of a minor blues, really, or first 3 chords technically. It's up to you initially how you want to do this. You could keep it quite loose and just sort of say, right, I'm going to be on A minor, and when I feel like it, I'm going to make that change to D minor. Or you could do it 2 bars, you could do it 1 bar, you could do whatever you want, really. So let's say we did 2 bars. You get something like this. That kind of thing. Now, this one, the 1 to the 4, there's quite a few notes that you could choose that would be in both chords, that work over both chords. So one really good way, and I've heard Steve Lukather talk about this, is the whole defining thirds. So for instance, if you're over an A minor 7, and you play this note, in context to that A minor 7, that is a flat 6, which, it's got a flavour to it. Might not be to everyone's taste, but it has. However, over the D, it becomes a minor 3rd. And that process just there is the crux of this kind of stuff, really. It's having one set of notes light up with the chord that you're on, and then when the chord changes, those notes kind of all change colour and are now on a new reference point. So one good exercise is to pick a note to aim for. So I'm going to start on the flat 3 of the A, and then my destination note is going to be the flat 3 of the D. So if I do 2 bars of that, like that. So cycling between chords 1 and 4, chord 1 and 4. And again, you can do that as 2 major chords. Hopefully you can hear the chord changes in that. All I can do is 2 dominant 7 chords. That's chord progression number 2. Let's take a look at number 3. All right, so the third one is where things get a little bit more involved, kind of. So a static chord, it's just a static chord. The 1 to the 4 is quite diatonic, so you could just get away with kind of picking a scale and using your ears. But this next progression, you can't do that on. You have to play the changes. And that is a kind of peak 2007 sort of fusion thing, which is cycling chords a flat 3rd apart. So if in A minor, if you start on an A minor, flat 3 would be a C. So you go an A minor 7 to a C minor 7, and then back again. So the reason you have to play the changes is because those two chords don't really appear anywhere naturally. So it's like it's almost like a key change. You have to go with it. You can't just pick one scale that works over both of those. The temptation would be this. Is to kind of go pentatonic shape there, pentatonic shape there, pentatonic shape there. Now, while that works, you're going to run out of ideas and it's going to sound a bit parallel very quick. So what we're trying to do is find everything in one place, so it's the smoothest possible transitions from one thing to the other. So if we take the A minor 7 arpeggio, you've got all those notes right here, sort of between the 5th and the 8th fret. Now, instead of moving that up here, find the notes for C minor 7 in the same place. So that would be here. All those notes are available directly under your fingers. And then the game then is to perhaps look at what stays and what changes. Take the A, that's the root of the A minor 7. And then when we go to C minor 7, what does that note become in relation to the C? Does it need to change, or is it all right where it is? So if we go to C minor 7, the A would become the 6th. That works if you're thinking of a kind of Dorian vibe, but maybe you want to go, oh, well, maybe I'll move it up to the minor 7, so 1 fret. And then if you did that all the way through, like for instance, the C is the flat 3 of the A, but then when I change to the C minor 7, it becomes the root. So that's a note that you could perhaps stay on. You can go through that sort of thing. So if we did 2 bars of A minor 7 to 2 bars of C minor 7, so that last little move there, I did 4 notes, which I would consider the flat 7, the root, and then the flat 3 of the C. And then on the chord change, I'm taking this note up 1 semitone to what would be the 5th of the A. Like that. And it's these little moves that you want to be trying to find, really. It's like small, little, basically the smallest point of resolution that you can do is a semitone. So, and it'll sound really smooth as well. So if you can find notes that are a semitone away from your destination note, it's all good. So that's progression number 3. Let's look at progression number 4. All right, progression number 4 is a 1-5-1. Now, you might be saying, hang on a minute, that's diatonic. I thought we're kind of getting out of the diatonic things. Well, yes and no. So going 1-5-1, what you can do is you could just kind of, pick one scale. However, that's not how we're thinking. What you can do is treat the 5 however you want, really. So you could make it an altered dominant. You could make it like a 7 sharp 5 and do some whole tone stuff if you want to do that kind of thing. So if I started on A major 7 this time, and then we went to E7, and then back to A major 7. Getting used to just outlining those two things and landing on chord tones is the one thing. But then what you could do, rather than going, right, I'm going to shoot up the altered scale flare or throw in a whole tone thing, is you can start to introduce tensions on their own. So for instance, you got the 1, and then we go to the 5. Maybe you want to add the sharp 5 in, which would be here. But what would be a good thing to do is to not add it in straight away. You can maybe sort of see the 5, then see the sharp 5, and then if you go up another one, that wants to resolve quite nicely to the major 3rd. So if I go 1-5-1, and then try and put that little sharp 5 on the 5, you'll see what I mean. That kind of thing. So yes, you go 1-5-1 and you can just do, well, it's all the major scale, whatever. Yes, but we're trying to be a bit more intentional than that. So you can go through and start adding in singular tensions maybe towards the back end of the bar of E7. So you're not thinking of it as the whole thing's altered and it's that scale, or the whole thing's this and it's that scale. You're seeing these individual moving parts, if that makes sense. And what that will do is get you used to adding tension to get to the destination. So that's progression number 4. Let's have a look at the last one. Number 5. Right, so the last one is a 1-6-2-5. So we're kind of getting into jazz realms here, but this is quite a kind of utility progression, this, because there's loads of different ways you can kind of line it up and loads of different ways you can think about it and substitute chords in and out. So in the key of A, because we're staying in A, chord 1 would be A major 7. Chord 6 would be F sharp minor 7. Chord 2 would be a B minor 7. And then the 5 would be E7. And again, whatever kind of alterations you want to put on the E. There's 3 different ways you can look at this. Jazz guys will look at this slightly differently. They would maybe look at the 1 and the 6 as just the same sort of thing. And then maybe like the 2 and the 5 is just a 5. So you've only got 2 chords to think about. And then you're almost reverting back to progression number 4. But trying to see a whole set of changes now, so 4 different chords, in one place, so you can get to all the information, is the challenge, really. So what you could do to practice this, first, straight off the bat, is get your 1 chord, and then play the arpeggio. And then try and find your F sharp minor 7 in the same place. Now, you're probably going to want to reach down here for this F sharp, or maybe up here for this F sharp. There's one here. Start the arpeggio there. And then the root would be there. So you're getting used to seeing stuff without that kind of security blanket of the root note being like right under your fingers. And then the 2 chord, same thing. Rather than moving out of position to go here, you're going to play it in position. And then the 5 chord, rather than maybe going up here, you've got this shape here. Another little habit is getting used to playing all the available notes in the same position, even if it doesn't finish on the root note. So there, that E7, the lowest possible note I could get to without going out of position, is the 3rd there. So you're playing down to the 3rd. So you start to see all these different notes of the chord in position. Now, if all this stuff is quite new, just doing that, you know, going through a standard or going through a progression and playing these arpeggios in position, or even taking a step back from that and just trying to get to your chords in one position without moving out of position, basically. It's so that all the information is accessible and you don't have to keep shifting, you're not going to get lost anywhere. And it's going to lead to smoother changes, both for chord changes and for your voice leading, basically. So that's the first thing. Same as the other progressions, but just trying to get it all in one position. The thing that you can do with this progression, and this is getting slightly into jazz theory, is first off, you can make the 5 chord an altered chord. So again, adding the tensions like we did in the last progression. But if we look at the relationship between the 6 chord and the 2 chord, that's a 5th away. So what happens quite a lot is you can make the 6 a dominant chord. So instead of this, if we make the 6 dominant, so make the F sharp dominant, now you've essentially got like 2 5-1s that you can play off. Not 2 5-1s, 2 5-1s. So you can make the F sharp like a 5 chord resolving to the 2 chord, and then play 2 chord as normal. And then you make the E7 a 5 chord resolving back to the 1 chord. So something like that. And if you look into substitutions and things for a 1-6-2-5, there's so many ways you can play it. You can start throwing diminished chords in. Start getting into tritone substitution. That kind of thing. There's like loads and loads and loads and loads of different ways you can do it. So that one progression is a good progression to just sit there for an afternoon or multiple afternoons and try all these different permutations until you make yourself sick, basically. So there you go. 5 different progressions to kind of set you on the path to changes playing. Play around with them, come up with your own versions, your own permutations, and I'll see you in another one. Peace.